Okay, a lucky strike. There hasn't been very much of photographic aerial photography in Norwegian archaeology. So in 2007, when I got the chance, I'm one of the few who has actually done, had some experience with it. Okay, but a little introduction to Trøndelag and the archaeology of Trøndelag. We're going to mostly look at Iron Age stuff. Sorry, but the older stuff is not present on, on aerial photography. Sorry, not yet. This is a weighted kernel density map of burial mounds and cairns in Trøndelag. And you can see that Trondheim is around here. That's not the center, archaeologically speaking, in the late Iron Age in Trøndelag. It's the inner part that is the center. And Trøndelag has well about 35% of the large burial mounds in Norway. So it played a big political role in early Viking Age and late Viking Age until this guy came up and got slaughtered at Stiklestad. And we'll visit Stiklestad. So, how did it start? One day around the 1st of July in 2007, I got a telephone. A colleague who reported that he could actually see stuff in a field at Stiklestad. Okay, I knew a bit about aerial photography. I had, as a student in Oslo, taken photos for a gas pipe project in 1990. So I spent I think about 20 hours in air with a Swiss pilot who used to tell me that every landing you can walk away from is a good landing. That was reassuring. And he also took... Yeah, exactly. And he also took me up in his Messerschmitt Bulk of Blom aerobatic plane. That was nice. But we didn't usually fly that. So we had happily also just invested in a Nikon D200 with GPS. Okay, so I had a camera, and I had another colleague at the cultural department which also could use cameras. So we were two who could fly. So we needed the pilot. And happily there is a helicopter firm at Stiklestad. Expensive, but actually it worked. And I eventually got a fair bit of money to do the thing. Okay. We'll mostly stay in the municipality of Verdal, which is one of the old counties in inner Trøndelag. Verdal fylke is one of the oldest counties in Trøndelag. And it still has the same borders as it had in late Viking Age. We'll stay around Stiklestad and Vinne. There are more. I'll show you a bit more found, but we took off from the helicopter pad, and some of the first things that came up was this at Stiklestad. And you'll see some surprising things here, which you probably haven't seen aerial photography of yet. But okay, that was 2007. In 2016, I got a new chance because of weather. I'll come back to the weather, why that matters enormously here, Magnar has said something. I'll say something more about that because it's really very important to get stuff. So here we are at Stiklestad, and here you can see the mounds. This is a drone photo. Matched together, you know, and it's an auto photo. One of the things you'll see here is these star-shaped mounds. Altogether, we found 40 features or burial mounds on the field. There's one still standing. Last man standing. Sold only one there. And a special thing about this burial field and the burial field at Vinne, which we'll come back to, is the presence of these star-shaped. In Sweden, they're called treudd. Anders Andrén has written a bit about them. They're datable to late Roman Iron Age into the Viking Age. At Birka, for instance, there's a lot of them. About 70% of such star-shaped mounds in Norway are in Trøndelag. They probably represent a heavy contact with Verdal over the mountains. Now, another interesting aspect of this field is in 1775, Lieutenant Lyng, an army lieutenant, drew this map at Stiklestad. And the burial field is represented. There's 15 mounds there. That tells us that, you know, about 24 mounds have been removed before 1775. Probably removal starts in the late medieval period and is ongoing up until now. From 1775 until today, 14 mounds have been removed, and that's agriculture. So we go to Vinne and Valstad. And here we again see the star-shaped mounds. You'll see the interpretation soon. Just neighboring Vinne is Valstad. It's just a couple of 100 meters between these two. And here you see these fantastic large, long barrows. These are burial mounds, usually containing female burials and datable to migration period until the Viking and through the Viking period. So again, in 2020 and 21, the weather was with us and we could do some drone photos. So you'll see this is a multispectral NDVI image, and you see not interpreted there and the interpreted one here. Especially interesting is there seems to be two burials here. My interpretation is that there is probably a round, ordinary burial barrow. And later, possibly that's pre-Roman, Roman Iron Age. Then sometime during the migration period or even later Viking Age, somebody, maybe they've already removed the round one, then built a new on top of it. Fascinating part of Vinne, going back to this, you know, something is kept and something is lost. So here we see on LiDAR what is left of the burial field at Vinne. And here you can see the mounds, you know. Unfortunately, of course, in 2020, 21, the farmer had to have potatoes. I wish I could order, what we're going to grow on these fields. No, you're not going to grow potatoes, not this year. But you don't know, we'll come back to that. You don't know what the weather is going to be. But it's fascinating, Again, star-shaped ones, there are 8 star-shaped burial mounds here. And they are a bit difficult to date because it's not certain they are burial mounds, in the sense that there is a burial in them. We'll see some GPR data which might indicate that there is not. Again, potato, but we have mounds around here. We'll see the interpretation next. Here's the interpretation. So we've added a good deal of mounds to this area. Of course, it's very, very, very nice to be able to visualize what do these mounds look like when they are still present, undisturbed, and how do they look on aerial photos and so on. And it's also very interesting to study, what the taphonomy, the information loss we're having. We have a bit of GPR done in 2022, I think it was, or 23. Some of you might know Manuel Gabler, knew him. Unfortunately, Manuel is dead. I got permission from his boss, Knut Påske at Nikon, to use a slice from his GPR here. And he agreed very much with mine. So these interpretations, here is his interpretations. And both the aerial photo we have from 2007 and the GPR data seems to show that there doesn't seem to be a trace of any burials in these star-shaped mounds. And that fits with the difficulty of dating them. There's some of them which has been recorded with burials at Birka, for instance, outside in Rogaland. There's been certified documented burials that can be connected to it, but it's not necessarily so that these have actual burials. Okay. A neighboring field. This came up in 2020 because a metal detectorist had done a lot of finds here. This is Nedreby, about 500 meters to the west from Vinne. And in 2020, he noticed that by using his own drone, he noticed that there was stuff present there. So I got BioDrone to do some drone photos. NDVI image, multispectral again. I'll show you the interpreted version. We found 28 burial mounds here. Interpretation overlaid on the ordinary orthophoto, drone photo. Why do we see this? Magnar pointed out precipitation, rain is important. But there's another factor which is also important, and that is what kind of soil is it on? The grayish, yellow-grayish here is soils that are very, very vulnerable to drying out. So, of course, on those soils, you find stuff. And partially, of course, this is due to the fact that these green stripes are streams that have been overplowed. So they've been closed as streams. They're not working any longer as streams, you know. But they used to be streams. And it's fairly obvious that there's been a conscious placement of burials on ridges in a landscape. About 85% of burial barrows are connected to tops and ridges in a landscape. But you can also see that the finds we have are nearly always on soils that are easily dried out. So if we go back to the climate data, 2007, June. And why June? That's because cereals. It's in Norway, in Trøndelag, it's June that the cereals will use to grow height. So if June is dry, they don't grow very high. In 2007, I didn't find that photo, but I have a fantastic photo of a surveyor I hired in to do some surveying in, because the farmer at Stiklestad allowed us to walk on the land and actually survey the visible mounds, you know, in the corn, and it wasn't higher than up to his legs, you know, like that. Quite simply. So June is the important month here. If June is dry, you might get stuff. And you see the same 2020 as in 2007, 25 to 50% rain. So 50% down means you get the conditions which will give you good data. Same in 2021, really. In total, we found about 306 features during the campaigns in 2007 and 2020 and 21. And you see that we did drone photo mainly in Verdal. So Stiklestad and Vinne and a couple of other places which I don't show. But you see the places we flew with helicopter here, largely. So summary and some research teams' suggestions for NTNU and NIKU, really. Experience is one helicopter actually worked quite well, especially with 3 to 4 people in it to help with surveying, looking. So helicopter is quite efficient to find stuff. Not necessarily so good for documented, because we had to use oblique photos, and georeferencing oblique images is it's not very good in my opinion. All of the finds, I think, is now recorded in Archaeology, the heritage database in Norway. And drones are excellent. Attila Haugen at Biodrone did a splendid job with drone photography here. For the research teams, landscape context of burial mounds, why use valuable land for those? That's a very obvious thing. Why do you use? And what is a burial field? When you look at Vinne, there is burials sort of spread out. But is this one single burial field, or is it, well, what is it? Why do we see some crop marks? These are seasonal variations, precipitation versus soils. How do the landscapes look? I find it very fascinating that you can get a good look at how the landscapes looked to the people building the burial mounds. More management follow-up. What impact does modern farming methods have on survivability? And how much have we lost? The thank you page. Thank you to NIKU for the GPR slides and money from my own county council. Riksantikvaren gave some money in 2007 for the helicopter, and so did the National Directorate for agriculture. Do you have anything more here? Yes, and great thanks to Attila for the multispectral and ordinary drone photos in 2021 and 2020. Yes.
Thank you, Lars. Any questions?
Thank you for your presentation. The first question is, are any of these star-shaped mounds actually extant anywhere in Scandinavia? i.e., are they fully undisturbed?
Yes, in Sweden, there's a lot of undisturbed ones. Also in Norway, we have undisturbed ones.
Right, thank you, because that is a new... I reckon that they are successful if I recognize a new sort of sign, and that's one. Thank you.
Thank you. That was really interesting talk. You mentioned the fact that you're not seeing pre-Iron Age sites on any of the aerial photography yet. It's been an age-old debate in aerial archaeology as whether we're not seeing things or whether we are seeing things and just failing to recognise what they are. Have you got any thoughts on potentially sites that might predate the Iron Age?
I think that this is, this is also a sort of general surveying method. So you'll catch things like cooking pits, for instance, and so on, and all kinds of pits. And what those are, we don't know. You'll need a lot of inspection on the ground, really, to find out the date, function of stuff we see. So I've been talking with Knut Påske and on some the need for some very sort of big landscape project in Norway to really investigate some delineated landscapes totally, by aerial photography, by LIDAR, by GPR, geophysics, so on, and also dating stuff, ground truthing stuff, because even if you see things on aerial photos and GPR, you still don't quite necessarily know what's causing these features, At least not all of them.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I also suggest we could talk about rectification of oblique photos as well. So I think looking into air photo, and some of your European colleagues would be able to advise on that, I think. So, thank you.
Thank you. I'm closing to my pension age now, so actually this is a good chance to sort of send off the data here, to Anthony or Niku or whoever wants to help me for the next couple of years or later do some stuff with it, because well.
Yeah, I'll allow a short one from Lukas.
Yeah, thank you, Lars. Have you explored satellite, very high resolution satellite imagery for those years that you identified as really production?
Yes, I've looked at it. Unfortunately, what was available, which I could have afforded for make the county council buy, I couldn't find anything that gave meaning. But in a wider landscape project context, that kind of images could, for instance, be valuable to reconstruct the landscape, which I think would be a very valuable thing to try to do, to understand how did the landscapes look and what did people living in the late Iron Age through most of these features I've shown now, what makes you, for instance, decide to build a burial mound on one spot? What's the criteria?
Yeah. We'll ponder this over the coffee break. Cheers. Thank you, Lars.